What's going on, everyone? True Techno Gamer here, back at it for another video. So this one is to talk about the state of TVs in 2024. What in the blue hell is going on with TVs? There's been some weird stuff that kind of flipped the entire TV industry on its nose in just the last year. And I'm going to tell you guys about it. We're going to talk about it. Before I get into that, please like, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate your comments, your subscriptions. Keep it going. Keep feeding me and, motivating me to get the content out. I appreciate it. All right, so let me set the stage here a bit before I kind of go into what's really been changing. So as of 2022, the state of the TV industry was getting pretty stale, to be quite honest, right? For 10 years roughly up to that point, so from 2012, 2013 to 2022, the hierarchy has pretty easily been OLEDs at the top, LEDs secondary. And up to 2022, really, the only OLED that was being produced for consumers was LG Display's OLED. Now, really quickly, there is a difference between LG Display and LG Electronics. LG Display is the company that builds the OLED panel, and they then sell it to OEMs like Sony, Philips, Samsung, and LG Electronics as well. So when you have seen LG OLEDs before, that's LG Electronics implementation of using an LG display panel. Okay, Sony OLEDs up until 2022 were all exclusively LG displays as well. Now LG Display uses a type of OLED technology that's called WRGB. The W stands for white. So basically it's a 4 subpixel structure with white, red, green, blue. I'm not going to go into all the technical information because my channel is not really meant to be that detailed with this stuff. I want to make sure that, this is consumable for the average person walking into a Best Buy. But needless to say, when I reference WRGB OLED, that is LG Display. The inherent issue with OLED historically has been about getting the brightness levels up. And so LG's solution to doing that was to add a white subpixel, right, to the pixel structure that, if you increase its intensity, it's white, so it's ultimately going to bring the entire brightness up in the picture. That's the short version of it. Now, the overall result of that, up until 2022, was easily, far and away, the best picture quality you can get on the market. Year after year, LG pretty much had a monopoly on winning every TV shootout like that all the media outlets would do. They had they grew to, start producing a wide variety of sizes up until 2022, ranging from 42 inches that you can use as a PC monitor all the way up to 83 inches. As of 2022, things are pretty stagnated though. In terms of the core tech, OLED wasn't really growing, wasn't really changing. The picture quality was great, but it fundamentally was pretty stagnant, honestly. But it was clearly the best. Now, LEDs had fallen behind. They evolved over that time period from being just LEDs with just a single sheet that was the backlight to what was called edge lit LEDs, which is having some lights kind of around the edges of the screen that can be controlled via the processor to turn on and off certain parts, to being what's called full array local dimming, which is essentially an array of typically hundreds of LED lights that can be controlled via the processor, right? And then to most recently what's called mini LED, which is the same thing, just that the LED lights are smaller, meaning that you can fit more of them in a certain size. So now you're getting to thousands of these lights, to even 10,000s of these lights. Now, all of that is because you want to be able to control certain parts of the scene so that when certain things need to be dark, they can be dark. Certain things need to be brighter, they can be brighter. Okay, that's contrast. So it turns out that contrast was like the the number one thing that all TV companies were shooting after, because it was the number one thing that consumers perceive as being a great feature of, or a key feature of great picture quality, right? It was contrast. The more contrast you have, the better, more realistic the image can look. And the best way to do contrast, the contrast is the range of the brightest whites to the dimmest blacks, right? So if you can get your screen blacker and whiter, you can do that. But you got to be able to do it with precision, because you may have like a star in a black sky that needs to brighten up, right? So that's why LEDs were trying to get these lights smaller and being able to control them more. Now we're at mini LED. OLED fundamentally is every single pixel, which in 4K image is 8 million plus pixels. Every single one of them can produce their own light. So they're self-emitting, right? So that'll be equivalent of an LED backlight with a 1-to-1 ratio of the resolution. So 4K LED would have 8 million LED lights behind each pixel, roughly. Again, there's no mini LED that does that. It would be prohibitively expensive to do so. So the most we get right now is about tens of thousands, right? Now, some tech stuff, but needless to say, the story was LG OLEDs are great. Contrast is supreme because they're self-emitting, because every individual light pixel can light itself and turn off itself. You have the blackest black, true blacks, and you can, against, with colors and brightness that was super vibrant, everything just looked great. The problem with OLED was twofold. One was that inherently the technology was not able to get as bright as the demands of the HDR, high dynamic range world, was demanding. It wasn't able to get as bright as LEDs, which is why LEDs still were relevant, right? Because for a bright room and for gamers that just wanted the brightest, the most vivid and poppiest images, LEDs was still a great option and generally cheaper. The second problem with OLED was the price. It generally was way more expensive to get an OLED, apples to apples, same price, same general feature set than an LED. The thinking was that over time, the price of OLEDs would go down. Again, OLEDs have been around now for over 10 years. So the price would go down. It would start getting closer to LEDs. And at the same time, the image will continue to get better and better. So the gap would grow from LEDs. That was the thinking up until about 2022. In 2022, a couple of things became evident. First of all, Samsung Display came into the OLED arena and unveiled what they call QD-OLED, quantum dot OLED. It's kind of similar to their QLED, which is quantum dot LED, but for OLED. Now, fundamentally, though, the way that the OLED is constructed is different than LG Display's WRGB. Okay, Samsung Display is fundamentally different. They use different light intensities, and the structure of it is different. Again, I'm not going to go all into the technical details, but needless to say, their goal was to make it something that could somewhat alleviate the inherent flaws of OLED, which is lifespan, because it's an organic material. So at some point, it's gonna wear out. So lifespan, burn-in potential, just like plasmas and CRTs back in the day. OLEDs can burn in. If you leave an image on the screen, static image, not moving for a long period of time, it could actually burn into the screen, which could be a problem for gamers. Now, a lot of the newer TVs have technologies to remedy that and kind of work around that, but it still is the thing. With LEDs, fundamentally the way they work, because they're not organic materials, you don't have to worry about burning at all. So again, a boon for gamers. So QD-OLED was meant to try to remedy some of that, and the brightness also being an issue. So brightness, burn-in, and lifespan. The QD part, the quantum dots, are meant to give more vivid colors and brighter colors, which is called color volume. Not just brightness, but the color volume, right? So that means that the blues, the greens, the oranges, whatever, could be even brighter. And than what you might find in LG's OLED. And fundamentally, the overall brightness was also brighter, right? Promised to be brighter while being more energy efficient, using less power. So the result was in 2022, Samsung and Sony adopted the QD-OLED, as their flagships. And Samsung released what they call the S95B at the time. and Sony had what they called the A95, A95K at the time. So the problem at the TVs at the time was that they only were limited to 55 and 65 inches in size. Brand new technology. They hadn't gotten the production, pipeline fully sorted out. They hadn't built all of these different size panels. It wasn't very scalable quite yet. But what was the result? Well, LG's dominance was finally ended, came to an end. And all of the media outlets, all of the professional reviewers were just gleaming over QD-OLED, saying it's the best technology out by far. Sony CV in particular, with their processing had the most accurate picture. But generally speaking, Samsung and Sony TVs were rated higher than LG's OLED and rated higher than pretty much every LED out there in the market. So now you start to say, okay, what? This just cements OLED as being that thing, right? Being that true technology. OLED is now, whether it's QD-OLED and how is LG going to respond, right? But OLED is going to cement itself and be that thing. LED responded around this time with, just kind of leaning into the mini LED, the smaller size LEDs, which did improve the picture for LEDs, by the way, without increasing the price too much. But it's still, that gap was there. Fast forward to 2023, guys. So Samsung, Sony, LG now have OLEDs. Samsung and Sony are kind of the two premier LED companies still. But then you start seeing the rise of some smaller Chinese companies by the name of TCL and Hisense. Now, previously we had companies like Vizio producing LED TVs, and Roku TVs, and companies like that to pretty limited effect, right? They were there for the budget consumer for sure. But they wasn't really stomping with the big dogs at all. There was nothing for Samsung and LG and Sony to worry about as being the big three, we call them, right? And TCL and Hisense kind of fell into that category as well. They were producing TVs that were generally priced much lower, but the quality was also pretty low, right? But in 2023, something crazy started to happen. For one, it became evident that OLEDs were not growing in sales and in their overall market share. For a while, OLEDs was creeping up. And the idea was that, prices would go down, technology would get better, the gap would get bigger with LEDs, and OLED was going to be the future, and it was going to keep going. But somewhere around 2022, it started to flatline. And in fact, by 2023, it started to go down. Now, why? Why would people not be getting the TV that's clearly the best, right? Well, because point number two, the prices of OLEDs kind of hit a wall. They were creeping down for sure. I remember 5 years ago, let's say roughly 2018, a 77-inch OLED was still like $7,000. 77-inch, which is like the 75-inch class. Nowadays, 75-inch OLED is about $2,500, right? So they obviously have come down quite a bit, but not nearly as much as LEDs. They're still much more expensive than LEDs, and we'll get into that. I'll show that. But prices aren't going down, and people started becoming much more budget conscious. And the fact of the matter is, the average person probably couldn't notice, especially in a store, in a Best Buy setting or something like that. They probably wouldn't notice the difference, the advantages with OLED versus a high-end LED, especially like a mini LED. To be quite honest, I mean, the average person looking at those two screens side by side wouldn't tell. They might see that the LED is even brighter and thus looking a little bit more vivid. But they don't necessarily have a concept of what accurate picture looks like, and they don't know, and they see the price tag, and OLED is still like 2 or 3 times more expensive. It started to flatline and go down, OLED sales. But another thing happened. It became clear that people were becoming obsessed once again with the big screens. The difference here, once upon a time, 50 inches was a big screen. 60 inches was absurd. 75 inches was crazy, right? Insane. And then we get to 85 inches. That was considered for a while to be like the biggest that a TV will get, right? Practically speaking. But that's not the case anymore. Guys, we now have the 100-inch class TVs being generally affordable. Now, they're not brand new. There were 98 and 100-inch TVs 3, 4, 5 years ago. But you never heard of them because they were just obnoxiously expensive, right? Like, it would have been, we're talking probably around that time, 4 or 5 years ago, probably like $50,000 for a 100-inch TV. So at that level, most people would just turn to projector, which makes sense. But by the time we hit 2023, something crazy started to happen. People started wanting to consume larger and larger screens. Companies were making large screen TVs, but then these companies, TCL and Hisense, came out with 98 100-inch class TVs and severely undercut the prices of the big three and of everyone else in the market. So essentially, they made 98-inch TVs super accessible now to the masses, right? For the price of what you would have paid previously for an 85-inch premium LED, or the price you would have paid for even a 75, 77-inch OLED, they're saying, hey, you could go ahead and get a 100-inch TV. So then the question is, well, what's more important, a bigger screen or better quality? And it turns out, to most people, the bigger screen is going to win out, right? Especially if you can get a much bigger screen for even less money than the high quality one. That's even smaller, right? So they disrupted the market because they severely undercut. Now, LG, Sony, and Samsung had 98-inch TVs, and they have their whole line and their premium TVs that they say and they tout is superior to, a TCL, a Hisense, a Vizio, a Roku, right? In those brands, because they have more money, more experience. They have better processing. They have better build quality. They have more features, et cetera, et cetera. That's their promise. So yeah, their TVs might be in some cases twice the price of those other brands, but they're saying, well, if you want the best, it's worth it, right? But guys, by 2023, you started looking at Hisense and TCL and saying, well, they're making quantum dot mini LEDs. They're making TVs that have full HDR support, Dolby Vision support. They're making TVs that have a full-on game mode and 144 hertz support, and HDMI 2.1 with 4 inputs, or 2 to 4 inputs, depending on the TV. I mean, everything that is state of the art is in these TVs, and doing it for less. Essentially embarrassing Samsung, embarrassing especially Sony, because Sony's always overpriced. They're literally priced higher than Samsung, higher than LG for the same things. You pay a premium with Sony, and just embarrassing them. And the problems is that in today's market, the economy, the economics of the TV world don't add up. These companies are losing money. They're bleeding money, in fact. And LG they have new leadership that's basically trying to find a way to get them back in the black. So they're not going to keep investing in things that aren't going to sell. They're not going to keep investing in things that they're losing money on, like their OLED TV lines, right? And they were by far they were distant third, if any, or actually lower than third, probably like sixth in the LED race. So they actually were kind of getting out of the LED race. LG, Samsung is still king in LED. Sony has their place in LED. So the OLED's price, the manufacturing of OLED is not going down. The price isn't going down. In fact, the new OLEDs in 2023 and 2024, when they came out, were more expensive than their predecessors. Like, really. So how is that happening? What the hell is going on? So let me take a minute here to walk through looking at what these TVs, what it looks like. So let me take a minute here to go on Best Buy site with you guys, and let's look at what the TVs that are out there are priced for, the size. What do you get for the money? And then hopefully you will see, as clear as day, how things are changing quite dramatically. Okay, so let's walk through what the landscape of TVs look like. To make this easier, I've kind of gone in and I'm using a compare tool to look at some of these TVs side by side. So I'm going to point out a couple of things. Okay, so on the left here, we see this is TCL's QM8. That's their flagship. That's their top of the line. You see it's a mini LED, which is as high as LEDs can go at this point, right? So it's a QLED as well. It's quantum dot LED. This is top tier LED technology. So this is their flagship. And you can see the price. It initially retailed for $1,800, And now it's down to $1,300. $1,300 for a flagship 75-inch TV from TCL, okay? The second column here is Sony's mid-range TV. The X90L is their mid-range, not their top of the line. They have an X95L, they have an X93L, and it's not their entry level either. So for a 75-inch Sony mid-range LED, this is not even a mini LED, by the way. This is the full array local dimming. This is not the flagship. You're looking at about $1,600. You see that it retailed initially for about $1,700, and it didn't go down nearly as much. Interestingly, though, it came out for MSRP that's lower than the TCL flagship. But again, that's a mini LED flagship. This is not even a mini LED, right? But $1,600. Similarly, we see a similar price point with the Samsung mid-range. This Q80 is their mid-range. They have a Q90, that's their flagship. This is the Q80 non-mini LED. Again, so similar to Sony, $1,700. And on the right here, we see this is LG 77. LG OLEDs don't have a 75 specifically, but it's the same size class, right? It's the same size class. So there's 77B3. The B3 is their entry-level OLED, okay? The C3 is the mid-range, the G3 is the high-end, and the M3, I guess you can say, is their flagship. So this is their entry-level. So to get you in the door to 75-inch class OLED, it's costing you now about $2,000. Look at what the MSRP was. It was $2,900, okay? And it came down by $900. So that gets you $2,000, but it's still noticeably more expensive than the rest of these here, right? And flagship to flagship, flagship for LED and then entry level for OLED is still a difference of, as you see here, roughly $700, okay? So if you're looking at this and you're saying I'm interested in a 75-inch TV, I'm just saying you can get a mid-range from some of the premier companies. You can get an entry-level OLED that is missing a lot of features that the TCL have, or you can just get a TCL for, a little over $1,000 for a flagship. That's crazy. So with this, I'm still looking at the 75 class, actually 77-inch OLEDs. I'm looking at the OLEDs in particular. So now we're looking at the LG C3. This is their mid-range. We're looking at the Samsung S90C. This is also their mid-range. And then on the right here, we have the high-end OLED. So we have the G3, which is their, again, top spec OLED, LG. And then the S95C, which is the top spec QD-OLED from Samsung, right? The new hotness. So what I'm showing here is look at the difference. Now this is the same size, guys. Same size, same brand, but look at the difference in just going up a class with like a tier within. So $2,500 is pretty consistent for the C3 and the mid-range S90C. But then it goes up to $3,800 and $3,900 respectively to get to the top of the line at 75 inches. Now, remember, the TCL flagship LED was $1,300. It was $1,299, right, for that flagship LED. If you want to get a flagship OLED, that's kind of what I'm showing here, you're looking to spend almost $4,000 for a 77-inch. So $1,300, almost $4,000. We're talking literally a 3 times multiplier. So the TCL could be out for a third of the price. That's what I'm saying. Think about that. So now I'm essentially showing that picture here. So the G3 top spec OLED, the S95C top spec QD OLED, 38, 39. That TCL QM8, 1300, and then Hisense has their top of the line. So this is the U8 series is their top spec OLED. This is the U8K, and it's only $1,200. So again, almost in less than a third of the price. And we see that the prices actually already came down. But we don't see a similar number. We don't see a strike through, right? The OLEDs don't move. They don't move near, especially the top spec OLEDs. You might see some movement in the B3 and the C3 maybe, but the G and the S95 and Sony's A95L and A95K, you barely see any movement. Those prices don't move. Why? Because the margins are already so thin on those TVs and they're already so expensive to make, they simply don't have room to reduce the price. Not even close, guys, right? Not even close. Okay, let's move up to the 83, 85 inch class for sake of argument. Same kind of picture here. Now, this is the 83 inch G3. That's their top spec for LG. The price did go down here, interestingly enough, a few $100s, but we're still looking at $5,000, right, for the 83 inch top spec G3. This S90C from Samsung. This TV, by the way, is LG's WRGB display, and I know that because there does not exist an 83 inch QD-OLED panel yet. Not yet. So for this to be 83 inch, it obviously has to be LG Display's WRGB OLED. It's still $4,000, right? And that's actually fairly decent. Now, S90C, again, is not their top of the line. It's not their flagship. This is LG's flagship. So that's why the difference is there. But guys, look at this. So Hisense flagship LED, mini LED, quantum dot LED, 85 inches. So you actually get a little bit bigger size flagship, $2,200. We're talking $5,000, $4,000. So this is literally half the price, more than half the price, right? Or less than half the price of the respective OLEDs. Same thing with TCL, even cheaper, right? $2,000 even for their QM8. So you look at this, right? If you're a consumer walking into Best Buy, and I'm telling you, if you see these TVs on the wall, these TVs look great and they're feature complete. They're packed. They have everything. HDR, Dolby Vision, game modes, high refresh rates, etc., etc. Mini LED, quantum dot, picture. It's everything for $2,000, right? Whereas if you wanted to go OLED, you're talking double easily. And then finally, this is where stuff gets real. There is like I mentioned, a new size that's considered to be the ultra large size today. And that's the 100 inch class, which is now pretty affordable, as you can see. This size used to be relegated purely to projectors because it was way too expensive for a TV to be here. But now, TCL and Hisense are going on their grizzly, and they're going crazy. And they have TCL, as you see here, a 98 inch. This is not a mini LED. This is not their top spec, by the way. This is not the QM series. And you see that QM series is over here. But still, an S5, pretty decent, LED, full array, for $2,000. You can get a 100 inch full array LED, 4K LED TV. That's insane. Hisense gives you a full 100 inch 4K, not mini LED again, not top of the range, but still solid size over quality, right? I mean, this is still good quality with a super size for $3,000. And look at how much they've been reduced by, right? This was originally $3,000. This was originally $5,000. They dropped this $2,000. What the, Hisense is tripping. Look at TCL over here. This is their flagship, mini LED Q quantum dot LED, 98 inches for $6,000. That initially, when this thing came out last year in 2023, this TV was $10,000, which is still would have been considered a bargain, considering that most of the competition that have a 100 inch LED was still well over $10,000. So that even would have been a bargain. But you got to think, well, at $10,000, if you're looking at TCL versus Sony versus Samsung, at that price for their 98 inches, yeah, you're probably going to want to go, if you're spending that much money, you're going to want to just go with one of the premium brands. So TCL got that and said, okay, yeah, you thought 10, psych, we really meant 6, right? And actually, I think this TV was actually even cheaper, like closer to Super Bowl time or Black Friday time. I think it went down. That's why it's sold out. People just were grabbing this thing like crazy. And of course, needless to say, I know you guys have already been seeing this, but there only exists one single OLED in existence from anybody at the 97 inch size, 100 inch class. And that's what you're seeing here. It's the LG G2 OLED. The G2, the 2 is 2022. So this TV is almost 2 years old now. And I want to point out that it's almost 2 years old and it has not dropped in price at all, as you see here. And there's no strike through, right? It's the same price. A 2-year-old TV. They have released a G3 TV, by the way, that was also, they released an M3 TV that was 97 inches. The M3 is the wireless OLED, which is just super cool tech, wireless, no cables, right? OLED, 4K, everything, all the bells and whistles. That TV was $29,000, so $30,000 for the M3 97 inch. They haven't moved. And I mean, look, this is the problem of OLED. OLED cannot scale down in price. This is what we've seen. We've seen years go by and OLED TVs are basically staying the same, if not even going up. And for the record, I'm not showing it here, but LG just unveiled the pricing for the new G4 OLEDs that are the same price. The 97 inch is $25,000, all the same. This is crazy. Compared to, look over here. Bro, $2,000. This $3,000. Even the flagship is $6,000. This is a factor of 4, guys. Right? Even from the flagship, 4 times the price for the same size to get an OLED. Right? And 8 times the price, over here. I mean, it's insane. So this is the point. Now, OLED not moving in price, still being just ridiculously expensive, way more expensive than LEDs. That's what I was showing here. Hopefully you guys see that. And there's no real path for growth here, right? Like OLED technology is not fundamentally changing. QD-OLED added a nice little wrinkle. It does make colors brighter. It is more energy efficient. Theoretically, it has a higher ceiling in performance for sure than the LG OLED, at least as they stand right now. LG added in 2023 with the G3 series something called micro lens array, or MLA. And essentially what that does is put these tiny microscopic mirrors in front of the pixels to redirect the light, because the light scatters when it comes off the pixels, and a lot of light is lost, which affects the potential brightness, right, for those WRGB panels. MLA corrects a lot of that and gets a lot more brightness out of that tech. We're talking the G2 peaking out at 900 to maybe 1,000 nits in real world content, to going up to 14 to 1,500 nits easily in 1 year with MLA. And now the new MLA is supposedly being able to go up to 3,000 nits. So they're seeing some huge growth potential, at least in brightness, but there's still some fundamental issues with that WRGB OLED that's not addressed with MLA. But I'm not going to go all into that. Needless to say, this is not sustainable, and this is not a picture that LG and Samsung can kind of continue with their OLED. It's not going to last. LED does have a path forward, though. And that path is what's called micro LED. Now, micro LED, for all intents and purposes, is probably the future of television technology. It's the pinnacle right now. It combines the best of OLED and the best of regular LED. Again, OLED is one-to-one mapping with pixel control lighting. So micro LED is pretty much getting close to OLED. In fact, it technically surpasses it, because each pixel has several subpixels to generate the colors. The result is that the picture can get much brighter than a typical OLED, but it has the perfect blacks and the inky blacks and the really, really high contrast that OLEDs have, that LED lacks. So you get the brightness of LED with the contrast of OLED, no risk of burn-in, don't have to worry about that. But it did not fix the pricing issue with OLED, as you see here. So micro LED has been something that's been talked about for years now, years. I remember seeing it at CES probably 5 years ago, easily. It was prototypes at the time, and they have really, really large sizes. So they were showing 200-inch, basically movie theater size, micro LED. There would be panels that they have to put together to make a single TV. So there would be 4, super large, like 100+ inch panels that can make that 200-inch panels, that kind of thing. Now, what's happening now in 2024 is that CES, Samsung showed that they were able to finally scale down micro LED to practical sizes like 85 inches, 75 inches, which are still large, but I mean, that's the small for micro LED. The smaller the size of the TV, the smaller the pixel size, right? So we're getting there, but are we? This is not the largest size micro LED, but I'm just showing that it actually can be purchased, as you see, from Best Buy and from other people. There are micro LEDs on the market today. They're really large, and they are. You thought OLED was bad, right? $150,000 for a 110-inch TV. OLED 97 inches, 25 grand, and LED 100 inches for 2 grand. I mean, that's the scale we're talking about. I don't expect micro LED to really be practical, meaning, let's say this same TV for 110 inches size, probably under 10 grand or about 10 grand or less. That's probably still not going to happen for, I would say, 5 to 7 years at the least. 2030-ish is probably when we might be looking at micro LED really starting to penetrate. It's just super expensive still, and it has been for a while. So, but this is probably the future. In a world where micro LED is a thing and or is a practical price, I don't see OLED as it is today, at least OLED really maintaining. I think that, yeah, LED might still be around because again, it's so super cheap and you can get much larger sizes for the budget conscious people. But then micro LED will basically take over the premium, which is where OLED fits in now. Just a thought, just a prediction, but we shall see. So there you have it, guys. There's some stuff going on in the world of TVs. I mean, to summarize, things have been disrupted. Like I said, within a year, 2023 really shows the transition point, I think. I mean, again, if you were talking to people that know about this stuff in 2021, 2022 even, it was pretty clear OLED is the future. It's the best. Prices will come down. OLED, we expected to see growth. Things were going to, continue to go up. And it was almost some talk like, okay, well, maybe do we even need LEDs? LEDs might be on their way out, that kind of stuff. Except for like the PC monitor market and stuff like that. That was a real discussion point, as recently as 2 years ago. And how the tables have turned. We've seen OLED sales drop a lot in 2023. QD-OLED, it's not really changing things. It's looked great. It's winning the shootouts. It's showing the best picture quality, most accurate pictures, and all that kind of stuff. But it's not selling. It's not selling. QD-OLED doesn't have, first of all, they don't have as many options in terms of sizes. They don't have 83. They don't have 48 inches and 42 inches and that kind of stuff yet. They only have 55, 65, and 77. And then also QD-OLED is still super expensive, just like OLED, just like the LG OLED. Meanwhile, again, TCL and Hisense are coming. I think that was the general theme from CES this year. I was there. They are just coming. They have a huge, wide range, and their premium TVs are actually premium. Again, 2 or 3 years ago, you can get a 100-inch TV, but it actually, because of the screen size, it shows flaws more. It didn't look as good, and you wound up paying a crazy price for it. And now, they're saying you can have your cake and eat it too. Our premium TVs have everything: mini LED, quantum dot, all the features you can want, all the features that are state of the art today, and you can get it for a fraction of the cost of our competitor. Even other, again, the Samsung and the Sony LED flagship TVs are still like twice the price of what they're offering. So at least twice the price. And then the OLEDs are 2-3 times the price and up, depending on the size, right? That's what I was trying to show. So that's disruptive, I think. And the problem is that, Samsung, Sony, LG, they can't play the pricing game with TCL and Hisense. I don't know how TCL and Hisense are doing it, quite frankly. Again, I know they're coming from China. Labor is a lot cheaper there, whatever. But they are embarrassing these companies with their price points. They're making quality TVs now that most people they're going to be fine with. They're going to be good enough. Even though, yes, OLED still would look better. And Samsung and Sony may have some better build quality and processing and stuff like that. But to the average person, I would say probably 8 out of 10 people, 7 or 8 out of 10 people, it would be more than good enough. It would not be worth the premium to pay for that extra quality from the premium brands. And as we go into 2024, all eyes are on Hisense. You're going to start seeing a lot more coverage of the Hisense TVs and the TCL TVs because they're readily available and they're good enough. They are. We're going to see a lot more of the main, kind of TV reviewer outlets review those TVs. And you're going to, I think, see a lot more favorable comparisons compared to Sony, Samsung, LG. I think you're going to continue to see, unfortunately, it breaks my heart. I love OLED. I think you're going to start seeing OLED continue to decline. And again, with the economics involved, that just means that LG and Samsung are going to invest even less. What incentive do they have to invest in bringing down the price of the 97-inch OLED if you're LG? What incentive do you have to putting out an 83-inch QD-OLED if you're Samsung? Or definitely even a 97-inch, knowing how expensive it's going to need to be, and how little it's going to sell, right? You don't have much, right? So that's kind of where we're at. If you're looking for a TV this year, it should be really interesting. Again, 98 is the new 75. Like literally, it's obviously it's still a large size, but it's going to be a practical thing that you're going to see a lot more people by the Super Bowl in 2025. There's going to be a lot of Super Bowl parties with 100 inches in their living rooms or whatever rooms. So look forward to that. That's all for now, man. True Techno Gamer. Let me know what you think. Are you looking for a TV? Was this information helpful to you? What do you think about OLED versus LED? What do you think about size versus quality? If you had to choose between the two, that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. So hit me up. Let me know. Till the next one, signing off.